Have you ever been interested in crushing some quartz to see what else might be hiding inside? If so, let me show you a fast, easy, and efficient way I crush my quartz for processing.
Hi there, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, I'm Tim or YepWelp. Whether you're new or you're back for another episode, thank you so much for stopping by to check out the video. So, why would you want to crush up quartz? What did it do to you?
Well, as some of you might already know, there's a very small possibility you could find some gold throughout the quartz. As quartz is the second most common material on Earth, and gold is a far rarer material. Yes, it's going to be rare, but it is a possibility. And hey, curiosity crushes the quartz, right?
The method you choose to use to crush up your quartz will highly depend on the size of material you're using. As you can see, the two different sizes of material here would vary on how you would want to crush it and how you'd want to approach crushing it. So the method I wanted to share with you today is going to be focused on the smaller pieces of quartz, as we have here.
I have seen a few different homemade ways to crush and process quartz, but everybody seems to have a way to break up the larger pieces, and not only that, sometimes it can be quite the mess. I personally have never seen a way to get all the quartz one step further to a consistent, clean, and small size that would be easier for processing while keeping all the quartz contained.
I do know that there are rock and quartz crushers on the market to solve this problem, but some of them are pretty expensive, and I personally don't own one. So I'm sure there's a few of you out there that also don't own one. So, what's the next best thing? Let me show you. An old coffee grinder. What does a coffee grinder have to do with crushing quartz? Wait, hold up. Before you say, "Yep, well, this guy's out of his mind," please, check this out. You just might be surprised. So I was lucky enough to find me a coffee grinder at the local thrift store, the Goodwill to be specific. I picked this one up for $3.99. And you can see this is a Braun brand coffee grinder. I don't believe the brand would matter, but I do recommend a few tips. So let me go over those now. So first and foremost, if you're going to be curious enough to try this, please make sure to take the safety precautions needed. Can never be too safe. I would highly recommend at minimum you get a pair of gloves, some safety glasses, and be in a well-ventilated work area. I definitely recommend a coffee grinder, not just a mixer that has a grinding function. Why is that? Well, I personally have burnt up a magic bullet trying out to do the same thing. And I do believe the reason why is because those mixers or blenders that have a grind function, which is meant for ice, is actually designed to have liquid inside the blender. And I do believe that the liquid inside that blender really helps to dissipate the heat built up by the friction caused when you're blending or grinding an object. Now, the coffee grinder obviously isn't designed to grind rocks, but it is designed to grind coffee. And coffee is a dry bean that gets ground up in here, and there will be no liquid aiding in keeping the grinder cool. So I do believe that is a function that a coffee grinder has over all mixers.
As stated earlier, I picked up my grinder from the thrift store. I highly recommend you get yours from a thrift store or find a very cheap option, as you're probably not going to want to use this to grind up coffee once you're finished with it. Good down to the last rock doesn't quite have the same tone to it as good down to the last drop.
If you happen to get any enjoyment out of the video, please consider clicking the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future YepWelp adventures.
The grinding blade actually has a clearance off of the bottom of the grinder cup. So some of these rocks might actually be so small they're going to lay underneath the grinder, or the grinder blade. You might have to rock the material back and forth if all your material is small enough where it is sitting under the grinder blade. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Just fill her up and mash the button full speed? No. I like to start with a very small amount. make sure you don't overload the grinder. So with the grinder loaded up with a small amount, I'm going to start by just pulsating the grinder with very short bursts and stops. This seems to help break down the larger pieces to a more manageable size. As I stated previously, you might have to rock the material back and forth at the beginning just to get it started if all your material is small enough where it is sitting under the grinder blade. After a few short bursts, you can slowly increase the burst time, while still letting up on the power button in intervals before allowing the grinder to reach a high speed. You will start to feel the grinder hit less and less material. As this happens, I continue to burst the grinder and then I start to rock the material back and forth. A little more shimmying and shaking will allow for the smaller pieces to be contacted by the grinder blade to ensure that all or most of the bigger pieces will be ground down to a manageable size. After the grinder comes to a complete stop, give it a few seconds to allow the material to settle. Remove the grinder top and make sure not to breathe in any quartz dust. As you can see in my video here, I am not in a well-ventilated area like I highly recommended, just to show you that this stuff can fly through the air very easily after being ground down. There is some very small particulates and you would not want to breathe that in. Carefully dump your quartz powder into a pan and repeat the steps with any more material you would like to grind. Please, leave me a comment on how you crush your quartz, or the ways you've seen people crushing quartz and what you think works the best. Here's a few reasons why I highly recommend just doing the interval of bursts on the grinder. First, you don't need full speed to grind the quartz. Second, at full speed, it could be possibly too fast and cause a larger piece of quartz to break through the plastic top. I mean, this plastic top is meant to hold in coffee grounds, not quartz rocks. Lastly, it is possible that grinding too much too fast could overheat the grinder and cause permanent damage to the grinder. So the first few scoops I put into the grinder were mostly quartz material that I hand-picked out of my old concentrates. This next scoop, I just took a scoop directly out of my concentrates, as I figure since quartz is the second most common material on Earth, majority of this in here probably is either quartz or contains quartz. Let's take a peek. As you can see, you can definitely tell there's a difference. As this material has a little more brown or an earthy hue to it, there was a lot more material mixed in other than quartz. But you can see the grinder handled it no problem, and it's down to the fine material just like the quartz. So once you've completed grinding up all your material, I personally like to send it down through a mesh screen of your liking, depending on how you're going to process your material. I'll be using a 30 mesh screen today, and I also have this little 2-gallon bucket set up that I just cut out the lid to allow my mesh screen to sit inside there, so it's very easy to agitate some cons at home and separate them down by size. If you choose to skip the classification stage, that's fine. Make sure to saturate your material with some water and some jet dry or another form of surface tension remover. You don't want any of those small gold particles possibly floating away now that they are extremely fine and dried out. Yep, welp. Not a single speck of gold in my quartz I used for this testing. There's definitely better ways to prospect gold. But, with that being said, I really appreciate you sticking around and checking out my process of how I crush quartz. And I hope I crushed your expectations and you enjoy how I crush my quartz. Until the next adventure, yep, welp.